Hi, everyone at the Stronger Digital Conference. Great to be with you. My name is Rupert Edwards, and I'm delighted to be joined from New Zealand by Scott McLiver. And we are going to be spending the next 15 to 20 minutes talking about Web3, what's it all about. I'm going to share some slides to guide us, and then Scotty would love to hear your intro, and then we're going to dive in and find out more about your thoughts on Web3. So, Scott McLiver, tell us about yourself. Partner at PwC for New Zealand, and what's your remit?
Hi, Rupert. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Yes, I'm a partner at PwC based in the Auckland office. I have a global role focused on emerging technology for privately owned businesses and organizations, but with a particular focus on digital assets and Web3. And I see you've got there also a founder of Glorious as part of my interest in the space. I've got some of my own personal investments and startups around the NFT ecosystem.
Brilliant. Scotty, thanks for joining us. There are very few people I've spoken to who traverse the blockchain, Web3, metaverse universe like you do. I'm going to move through some of these slides as a prompt for 15 slides, 15 minutes, just to see what comes from this. And first of all, just to say, you're a founder, one of the founders of Glorious. One of Glorious's great projects over the last few months is working with the All England Tennis Championships with Wimbledon to do a centenary commemoration of Centre Court and to do an NFT drop. Wimbledon have also worked, I think, with Roblox and done a sort of Centre Court expression within the Roblox universe. What do you think grabbed Wimbledon's imagination about Web3 and the metaverse as you talked to them, or a similar kind of organization? This is a legacy brand concerned about how they express themselves. What's sort of some of the key thoughts there?
Well, I might just kick off by saying, Rupert, I know kind of a little bit of risk management. Everything that I share here is just for education purposes. We might talk about tokens and digital assets, but certainly none of it is investment advice. But sorry to get that out of the way, Rupert. Just
very important.
But yeah, so I think most brands and organizations are now starting to realize that the web is absolutely on a evolution. And we're at the early stages of a deeper fan experience, a deeper customer experience, which is often described as Web3. I think Web3, it's wrong to say it's not well understood, because I don't even know whether there's a clear definition for people to understand yet. But for me, I think there's a couple of things which define this next evolution of the web. Web 1, we all know about, is the original internet, where predominantly users would look at web pages. We would look at content that other people had created, organizations had created. That was Web 1. Web 2 was the birth of, when we saw the birth of Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, and largely symbolized by this phenomenal amount of user-created content. So users of the web weren't just, consumers, but they were also producers of information. So that was Web 2. And now we're seeing the birth of Web 3. And that can be signified by, I think, two major features. One is that digital items and the web, pieces of the web itself, can be owned. So you can actually have ownership of pieces of that web experience. Obviously, NFTs being one element of that. And next, it's decentralized. So, and it's a really, really important point, as opposed to, sorry, Rupert, you just jumped on.
No, you mentioned decentralized, and I thought I'd just skip to our decentralized.
Yeah, cool. So what that really means is that as opposed to central servers like Google or Amazon or Facebook, they have got the central servers where they're the central point of failure that we interact with. But that means they have a huge amount of control, and that can be for better or worse. In a decentralized network, which these beautiful diagrams show, there's no one who controls it. It's basically just a series of peer level nodes. Now, what that means is that you don't have big behemoths that build based on the back of users' data. And that's one piece of the Web3 revolution. right? Is that no one controls it, no one uses your data. Because I think one thing that's become really obvious in recent years, Rupert, is if something's free, you're not the customer, you're the product, right? And that's something that people are starting to click to.
Yeah.
But we come back to Wimbledon. I mean, I think as these businesses realize that there's a fan ownership experience around NFTs, collectibles, basically to just continue that journey of relationship between the organization, the history, and the fan, there's an opportunity with digital assets. And where Glorious, I think, has been successful with Wimbledon, fine artists, but also the Mandela Foundation, is Glorious is it's a very legacy respecting, and some would say, softly enter into that space for these brands that hold their reputation so dearly, right? So I think it's a largely a softly approach. Then you've got the likes of Bored Ape there, which is the other end of the spectrum, which have done a phenomenally great job of moving pop culture. So Bored Apes, so Scotty,
just to drop a question in with this, I've got a few slides here. So around Bored Apes, just to sort of segue us into another element of Web3. So here's the landing page for the Bored Ape Yacht Club. I don't know if you own a Bored Ape, but right now, if you want to buy a Bored Ape today, there were 10,000 ape NFTs minted, but right now one will cost you, I think, $95,000 is the cheapest. And the community behind the Bored Apes have released an ape coin, which will be the coin for the economy of the ape DAO, and that's extremely valuable. If you had all of the ape coins, that's 1.6 billion in value today. So taking that example of the Bored Ape Yacht Club and thinking about DAOs, what is a DAO? And what does that mean for this new part of culture? As you've said, this is popular culture in a whole new expression from the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Where are they heading? What will it all be in 5 years' time?
Geez, well, that's $1 million, probably $1 billion question, but I suppose there's a couple of things I would touch on for Bored Apes. So I do feel people get slightly misunderstood. You're not really buying a picture of a monkey or an ape, right? That is the visual representation of your membership in that community, right? So that's a really, really important piece. If it was purely a piece of art that had no rights, no utility, no benefits attached to it, then it would just be a picture of an ape. However, the visual representation being the picture you look at, that's arguably the least valuable piece of the puzzle. You're a 1/10,000th owner of that community. And I think that's a far more understandable way of some traditional investors to think about why you would support this journey.
And so is that community a DAO?
Well, I'm not actually sure. Bored Ape, there's pieces of it that are a DAO, but it was also created by a business called Yuga Labs, right? But there is an ape DAO, as you've mentioned there, quite right. A DAO is the concept of it means decentralized autonomous organization. And I think one of the best ways to think of it, it's almost like a trust. Imagine a trust on the blockchain, right? So each member has the right to vote via their token. So the members all vote like a sports club, but as opposed to having, I guess humans who make decisions, they all make collective decisions, which is made possible via the technology of the blockchain, right? And where you could say, well, we could have had a voting system before. You could have, but you couldn't link the voting system to the actual custody and spending of the assets. So the assets of the DAO can sit within a wallet, which is also controlled by that voting mechanism. So you can link the decisions with the actions much, much better in a blockchain situation.
So you're coordinating together both governance, organization, and value, the movement of value, transfer of value.
That's exactly right, Rupert. I mean, in the best example, imagine you and I set up a 2-person DAO. You and I could each put a certain amount of digital money into a smart contract, and the DAO could, have pre-programmed it into it which type of things Rupert and I will vote on, or Rupert and I and his brother will vote on, and that's how we will make these decisions, and that's how we will decide to buy new assets, sell assets. I think that DAOs are getting a lot of discussion. The bit, Rupert, given that your strong legal background, we haven't really figured out in any of the major economies the process to link. There's no legal structure for a DAO. So a DAO isn't recognized as a legal entity, right? So it's too early in this I guess, evolution. So what that means is there's a lot of work that's going into how do we link the DAO to the real legal framework. And at the moment, often that's done via trusts. So a trust might own a group of assets, but the trustee will state the assets are to be basically used in accordance with the voting of the DAO, right? Ultimately, we're going to need some legislation to help identify what a DAO actually is.
Scotty, thank you. So the Stronger Digital network, faith-based and non-profits and charities. So where DAOs may relate to the mission and work of non-profits, I think is an interesting thing. I don't know if you've come across Big Green DAO, which is Kimball Musk, Elon Musk's brother. He founded a charity some while ago called Big Green, which basically inspires and educates and grants money to community organizations and schools to grow their own food and to learn about sustainable food production. And they formed a DAO. What sort of values might you see for nonprofits, community organizations, charities, and how they either gather funds, fundraise, or distribute those funds and work with projects?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Rupert. I actually think it's one of the areas where there's quite an obvious use case. A couple of reasons. One, raising money becomes more borderless if you're doing it in a digital asset sense. And you've seen that anything from donations to the Ukraine, Ukraine calls all the way through to, aid for African countries, and it is increasingly delivered by, crypto assets, right? So with DAOs for philanthropic purposes, you can bring because at the moment you think in a non-DAO environment, you give your money to the charity, and that's kind of the end of the journey. It's basically you give your money, and then other than getting a newsletter, maybe that's kind of the end of what you know about what's happened. Whereas in a DAO environment, you can link the providing of the funds with the future decision making about where that fund could go. So a real simple example, we could set up a DAO for ballet dancers scholarships. So right, for children, children under the age of 12 that are into ballet or to rugby or you name it, we're going to give out 50 scholarships a year to enable them to meet their dreams of traveling abroad to enhance their careers. You could each put in $1,000, and the DAO itself could vote on the applications. So here's the 100 applicants, and we will vote to choose the 50 that each year will get given the £10,000 of travel subsidy. That's one simple example that, the list is endless, and you've linked the ability for you to give money and vote on where it goes. And it creates a stronger link between the donator and the cause. That's
really helpful, Scotty. So it'd be a space to watch along with the legislation that might go alongside it to give some more of a clear foundation towards how DAOs work. But that's really helpful.
To give you an example of a DAO, if anyone hasn't heard this before, there will be a DAO that purchases a professional football club one day, right? And it's just a matter of time where a significant group of fans get together, and yes, they will appoint a CEO and a management team, but there'll be some big governance decisions which they'll vote on, and there'll be, the 800,000 fans will provide the capital for that football club to exist.
Well, the local non-league club where I live was going to go into administration, a very small club in the sort of 10th league, and a group of 7 university students who had been school friends brought it together. I don't think it was a huge expenditure, but you can imagine something like that. Instead of being 7 school friends, they could create a DAO, and with 70 or 700 of their wider community and social media followers to join in with doing that. I've heard you talk before about proof of attendance tokens and how they might unlock value for the organization and for the fan or the member of the community. Do you want to give us a couple of thoughts about that?
Yeah, sure. So proof of attendance, POAPs are often called proof of attendance protocol. They're a mechanism where, like, concerts are a great example, or sports events. You could be at the event, and during that window, maybe let's say the 90 minutes of a British Lions game, if you're there, you can mint an NFT, which is your proof of attendance, right? So that could be anything from a little simple digital commemorative token of you attending the second game in South Africa, all the way through to, you were watching it live on TV. It's proof of actually being part of an event or or something that's actually played out. Now that there means you've got, there's actually a couple of use cases already, and we're still learning about this, right? So one, you've got this token, no different to, Rolling Stones ticket stubs are worth a fortune, or, the first ever Beatles concert, you've got a ticket to that, there's some value there. So you got that really pure collectible piece, which, like all collectibles, most of them might have any value, some of them will. But I actually think there's this concept of POAPs when you combine them with, and you might not have heard me talk about this before, Rupert, but soul-bound tokens. So there's this concept of soul-bound tokens, and it basically just means an NFT that you can never transfer. And that's where the concept of soul-bound, it's bound, once you mint it, it's bound to your soul, and they're not able to be sold or moved. They're for you. So Rupert was at the British Lions, and that's his POAP, and it can never be moved. Now, where that becomes really interesting is, you take, I'm just thinking about boxing, you take Anthony Joshua. Let's say Anthony Joshua knew that here's these, 600 people that had a proof of attendance token when he won the gold medal, that 600 people were at the gold medal when he won that, or that maybe one of his first ever victories. That gives this extraordinary ability for athletes or brands or bands, music acts to say, right, here's some free tickets for my next event. I mean, there's a whole engagement piece because you've got this immutable history of support. And that's where POAPs are interesting, this immutable history of support. You could have the largest bands saying, for all of our fans who, collect 5 POAPs of our, over the next 2 years, get free tickets to the following year. I mean, it all just comes down to how we can be innovative around rewarding communities for being true supporters, not just clicking on Instagram and liking something.
Yeah, very, very big gap between those two. Last question, because we've reached our time threshold. How many metaverses are there going to be? Which one should I choose? If I'm a non-profit, for example, or even a church, and some kind of community organization, and I want to connect and be in the right place, how do I process this at the moment?
It's a really, really tough one, Rupert. It's a good question. I mean, I think there'll be multiple. I mean, look, I think there'll be one metaverse, one open metaverse, which I personally think the metaverse is just a description that we are using for a more immersive internet. So to me, the metaverse isn't just putting on VR goggles. It's just a more immersive internet. It doesn't have to be VR. Like, as we get more immersive worlds, like we're seeing Roblox and Decentralised and Sandbox and so on. So more immersive internet, but that you can also own things, because the embedded economies in there is what makes it really important. So I think that kind of broadly describes the metaverse. And I actually think that, frankly, you're going to probably see a little bit like, we don't say which social media platform do you use. We know there's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, and they've all, we jump between the two of them, and some are synced and some aren't. And I think broadly it'll be like that for the metaverse. There'll be some worlds that are popular worlds, some are realistic worlds, some are not realistic worlds, but there'll be ones that grow big, just like they get the network effect of Twitter or Facebook, and other worlds will be niche and small, but they'll have a hardcore group of communities, right? But I think what you do find, Rupert, is most of these platform areas, the top 2 or 3 become extremely dominant because of economies of scale. So the 2 or 3 biggest will be kind of global phenomenons, and the rest will be niche.
So a while to go before we know where that's going to go. Scotty, you've been so kind to share time with us. It's later at night in New Zealand. I was going to ask you about play to earn games, but we'll have to.
That's fine. We can touch on that if you want.
Give us 30 seconds on play to earn and phygitals.
Okay, so play to earn is basically games where, so take Fortnite. with Fortnite as a phenomenal game. They have created a multi-billion-dollar game where the players spend money on digital items, but they don't actually own them. They just rent them. In a world where you truly own them and can sell them, the players actually earn real value. So that's what play to earn is. The digital items within the game have real value, and that you earn while you play. Phygitals, that's this concept of clothing or items which first exist as an NFT, like those pair of Nike shoes. You buy and trade them, and at some point in the future, Nike will give you the ability to turn them into real shoes. So they're a physical and digital item. You can wear them on your feet in London, and you can also, your avatar in the metaverse can also put them on their feet in the metaverse.
Fantastic. So if you had one final bumper sticker kind of comment or sentence about what is all the hype of Web3 about, where would you land it?
Oh, I'd say that we're in such early stages in infancy that we don't really know where it's going to end up. It's like us talking about the internet in 96, 97. Like it's so early. I think arming innovators with the ability for fans and, consumers all over the world to own pieces of a digital experience is going to be extraordinarily interesting, but really just don't know where that's heading. Ultimately, it's around a more immersive and ownership-driven experience.
Scotty.
And sorry, just what I'll add there, Rupert, is why ownership's important is when you've got skin in the game, you're a different type of fan or community member. So Web3 allows community members to have skin in the game.
That is really helpful. Thank you for making the time tonight. Superb. Really appreciate it. And get some good sleep in New Zealand, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Rupert.